So, Sean, two big issues, I guess, in the press last week or so. One, of course, is Iran. I'm not going to go there for a second. The other one being, did he, didn't he, should he, shouldn't he, as in Keir Starmer.
Right.
And the continuing saga of the Petal-Mandelson Affair. And perhaps a quick summary, as I'm sure listeners will know, Keir Starmer appointed as a political appointment Peter Mandelson as UK ambassador to the US. And then it later emerged that Mr. Mandelson had failed national security vetting before taking the role. And this was revealed by a scoop from The Guardian, I think it was, a week or so ago. So the specifics are, it's a bit embarrassing. The UK's specialist vetting agency recommended Mr. Mandelson should not get top-level clearance. And obviously that's important because in this role, he would see top-level security stuff.
Yep.
But officials, so these are the civil servants in the Foreign Office, overruled this advice and granted clearance anyway. Stammer, initially in the House, had claimed the proper process had been followed to the letter, but then questions arose, particularly last week, about what he knew when. And then in comes into the story a guy who was probably pretty much anonymous before then, Olly Robbins. Sir Olly Robbins.
Yeah.
He looked too young to be a sir, but anyway. And he...
That's a bit ageist.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. He was, for a relatively short period of time, the senior civil servant in the Foreign Office. And it was he who approved the override of the vetting decision.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you again. He was what euphemistically known as the PUS, the Parliamentary Undersecretary. Olly Robbins. The PUS they were calling it.
PUS sounds a little bit better.
But
he did override the decision, even though he never saw it.
No.
He said he never saw it. But anyway, he also did not inform, and I guess this is the critical bit, did not inform Downing Street promptly that Mr. Mandelson had failed security vetting. So rounding this off, Starmer's view is that Olly Robbins withheld crucial information. Robbins says he was under enormous pressure from Downing Street to push Mandelson through, sort of nod him through. And he's suggesting that he was politically steered to give a favourable outcome. And even though he reckoned this didn't affect his decision, he chose to say that. So make of that what we will. The crescendo is when all this broke, Mr. Stammer did the decent thing and sacked Olly Robbins. And this triggered all sorts of questions, cabinet divisions, concern about the human aspect, how civil service people are treated, calls for Robinson to come back, wider fears of a breakdown in trust between government and the civil service. Well, I think that's fair. And all sorts of other issues connected. Now, it's worth saying that Mr. Stammer has apologised for, I guess, what he regards as an error in appointing Mandelson in the first place, given what everyone sort of knew to be the case and his connection with Jeffrey Epstein. And it just seems to me that, and Mr. Robinson is the latest, but before him was Morgan McSweeney carried the can, didn't he? And then Chris Wormold was Starmer's private secretary. He went. Simon Case went. And I think I missed off a few of the communications directors. It just seems to me that once you get to the top of the greasy pole as Prime Minister, or at least in this case of this Prime Minister, it doesn't matter the rights or wrong of it. Other heads will roll to preserve yours. And that feels wrong to me.
Yeah, there's an element of me that agrees with you. If I may be allowed to, I'll come on to the actions in a minute, but I'm not sure that I would agree with the principle that whatever happens within government, the Prime Minister should be held responsible, because he can't be over every element of every department in government. I just think that, coming down, that's why you have parliamentary undersecretaries, that's why you have assistants, that's why you can't be, I know the argument was, and it was Woodrow Wilson, I think, who had the buck stops here on his desk. Well, that can't be strictly true, because if the buck stopped there for everything, then Prime Ministers would never stay in office for any period of time whatsoever.
Why does, by all accounts and everything I've read and heard, a talented civil servant have to be sacked.
Well, that's what I was coming on to. You interrupted me because I said I was going to get onto the actions.
I interrupted you, interrupted me.
I said I was going to
talk about... why don't you ask this question then?
Why don't I talk about the actions? Because I think sacking Olly Robbins was foolish. I think, and why I think that happened was...
But why?
Senior politician... Well, that's what I'm getting on to, if you give me the opportunity to do so. Senior politicians now have got to be seen to act, and they've got to be seen to be ruthless. This is, or you can't, you're weak if that's what's always thrown at. You're weak if you dally. I mean, we're not going to talk in direct comparisons, but Boris Johnson kept so many people in office, didn't he, in terms of not getting rid of them when it was perceived that they'd done something wrong. And now I think what we've got is the opposite end of the spectrum. Stammer feels he needs to be seen to be strong and take decisive action straight away. And in doing so, I think preemptively he's sacked Olly Robbins, and I think it's foolish.
I don't think he's trying to show how strong he is. I think it's simply a deflection technique to say, I couldn't possibly have made a mistake myself. It must be, in this case, this chap over here. So he can go. So I don't even think it's to make him look strong. I think he's just trying to get the public to think it must have been something he did wrong then, not Mr. Stammer.
No, I don't think so. I think he's that you were talking about a character just now. I think he's going to prove to be central to this particular incident, and I think there's going to be Mr. Morgan McSweeney, who's been called to give evidence before a select committee in the coming week. I reckon he was the conduit between Number 10 and the Foreign Office, and he was operating as in lieu of Sir Keir Starmer. He had him doing ironically, it's a bit like Mandelson operated for Tony Blair, how he operated there, except he's nowhere near as good as Mandelson was, albeit, we don't know how Mandelson directly operated.
But Blair didn't sack anyone, did he? He didn't sack anyone.
No, he didn't.
He didn't go through. I mean, he had Alistair Campbell, and he I think when he went of his own decision, there was a guy called Hill, wasn't there? You might not remember him, but as an example, it just seems to be, this is what we have to do now. We've got to deflect, or in your case, show we're tough. So we're going to sack someone. Well, why not do what anyone else would do? Say, look, I think you might have dropped the ball here. Next time it happens.
Yeah.
And then this thing wouldn't have blown up, would it?
No, it's an after. This has proved to be more damaging than the original event, hasn't it? Yes. As often seems to be the case. The attempted, as some would see it, the attempted cover-up of what actually happened and what didn't happen. And now the accusations are flying at Stammer that he's either not in control because he's or he's incompetent. And I don't think that's fair. I think you have to delegate a certain amount of responsibility, but I think it's a question of who you delegate that responsibility to and how they handle that responsibility, whether they're wise enough to be able to know what pressure should be applied where and where it shouldn't. He's made a mistake, as I say, I think, in sacking Olly Robbins. In fact, in hindsight, I think Olly Robbins could have got him out of this mess. He could have been an ally in getting him out of this mess if he hadn't have leapt in so quickly.
Yeah, well, he went further, didn't he, in his moment of fame when he revealed what happened to, is it Matthew Doyle?
Matthew Doyle, yeah.
Yeah, the former communications director who Number 10 tried to get a job in the civil service at a time when the civil service were reducing senior headcount.
Yeah.
Talk about tone deaf.
He wanted to get in an ambassadorial job, didn't he? And
when he had experience as ambassador.
Yeah.
And what did Stammer say in the House yesterday? It didn't come to pass.
Using biblical language. I know. I just think it's been badly handled. I mean, I was listening to somebody. Andrew Marr was talking to somebody yesterday on the radio. Because he was quoting somebody else in the afternoon, and I forget who it was, another one of the analysts, and I thought that would be a really good way to show strength, and that's to give him his job back. That would, I think, with a lot of the British public, that would show I made a mistake. I know I've made a mistake, and this is an honourable man. He's doing a good job, and blah, blah. So, if he will take it, I mean, there'd have to be negotiations behind the scenes first to make sure, but give him his job back and stand up and say, look, this was an error of judgment, and put him back in post. But I think right at the beginning,
whose error? It
was Stammer's error, wasn't it? To sack Olly Robbins.
So he's got to say sorry. basically.
Yeah,
Again.
I think so. I think it would quite. I
Would be
mean,
different.
we're hearing a lot of hypocrisy from certain members of the opposition about, now they're champions of the civil service. Can you believe this? Dominic Cummings didn't think much of the civil service, which was a government that her ladyship
but
served
this is where Stammer, who famously said, "I will stand by my people. I won't throw anyone under the bus." Well,
Yeah.
he's got a bus with high wheels, isn't he? Because he's thrown so many people under the bus to save his own skin.
Yeah, I don't think it's right, and I think I think he needs to take a step back from this, and I think this has been handled particularly badly. I think from the beginning, when he sacked Mandelson, he should have. I mean, there are questions to ask as to why at that point there wasn't a full internal investigation. You would have thought at that point there would have been, if you'd have been Prime Minister, if you'd have been Starmer and you'd have been thinking that you'd been misled in terms of what you'd been told, you'd want to see everything,
Well,
cross
you'd
together.
think so, but allegedly this document, which included a tick in a red box or something, like "don't let him anywhere near the civil service" type tick.
Yeah.
That was never shared with anyone.
No.
Other than sort of the vetting office. Now, I understand that the details of the vetting process are private and confidential because they literally go into everything, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't
give
they made a point, didn't they, of saying it's not, they then don't say yes or no. They make a recommendation, this is what we're leaning towards, as opposed to.
Yes. And that's what Robbins said there. Even though the recommendation was don't clear him, he felt that he could still have the role with mitigations in place.
Yeah.
Now,
Now,
civil service language.
the other thing that would be interesting here was two other things I think is interesting. One is watch out for McSweeney, because I think he's going to spill some beans when he gets
a Cummings.
in front. Yeah, the Cummings man, effectively. And the other question is, which was talked about a couple of weeks ago, that the reasoning behind why they were leaning against. There were a lot of people saying it was nothing to do with Epstein. It was to do with his connections with China and as have come to light since Russia. So that would be ironic, wouldn't it? That if all this is really sod all to do with Epstein.
Okay. Well, look, I thought we'd cover that.
Yeah.
And I've just got one question for you. Are you going to resign?
I am. I'm off.